An aide to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has denied Kyiv was involved in the sabotaging of the Nord Stream gas pipelines. The undersea pipelines, which brought Russian natural gas to Germany, were blown up in September 2022. The New York Times reported earlier, citing unnamed U.S. officials, that U.S. intelligence indicates a pro-Ukrainian group carried out the attack. German media is also reporting that there is evidence pointing to possible Ukrainian involvement. The German government is still investigating the incident, but Russia says that the reports show a UN-led international inquiry is needed. And let's cross straight over to our political correspondent, Simon Young, for more. Simon, a joint investigation by 3 German media outlets has brought to light some of this new evidence. What exactly did they find out?
Right, I should say, first of all, these are unconfirmed reports, but they're by some of Germany's most respected media organisations like the public broadcaster ARD and the newspaper Die Zeit. And what they've got is many concrete details about what they say happened with the Nord Stream explosions. They say that prosecutors, investigators have identified the boat that was used in the operation to blow up the pipelines, a yacht that it is reported was rented from a firm in Poland that apparently belonged to 2 Ukrainian nationals. So that's one concrete link with Ukraine. They say investigators have found that 6 people were on board and involved in the operation, including divers and medical personnel. Their nationalities are unknown because fake passports were used to rent this yacht. And then they go on with more details that the location of this boat was tracked leaving Rostock in northern Germany and was subsequently located near a Danish island in the Baltic Sea. And according to these German media reports, as I say, is what they are at the moment, a Western intelligence agency had already warned or suggested some months ago that a pro-Ukrainian group, as it's described, could have been behind the explosions of the Baltic Nord Stream pipelines. So quite a lot of detail, which tends to sort of corroborate some of these claims, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Have there been any reactions to this in Germany at this point?
Right. Well, in Germany, the federal public prosecutor has been investigating this since October last year. And it looks like the authorities here have pretty much been caught on the hop by these media revelations this evening, because as early as as late as this afternoon, rather, the German government was still saying that, you know, the investigation had not reached any conclusions, had no results to show. And that's pretty much in line with what the Swedish and Danish governments have told the UN just a few days ago, as well as the Germans. They've all been carrying out their own investigations, and they say there's nothing to report yet. Well, it appears very much that's not true. I should just also say there isn't any clear evidence of Ukrainian government involvement. The President Zelenskyy in Kyiv says they've got absolutely nothing to do with it. But of course, if it does prove to be the case, it could really send shockwaves through, for instance, Western German support for the war effort in Ukraine as well.
Yeah, no indication of that at this point, though. Let's rewind quickly and take a look at the role that the Nord Stream pipelines played in Germany's relationship with Russia in the lead up and the early stages of the war. Briefly, if you can.
Well, Nord Stream 1 was operating from 2011, bringing Russian gas to Germany. Nord Stream 2, during the planning phase, was much more controversial and it never went into operation. And that was because it essentially bypassed Poland and Ukraine, undermining their interests, it was seen as doing, and making Germany and Western Europe much more dependent on Russian gas. It took the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I think, to force a rethink here in Berlin. And the German government ultimately agreed not to put it into operation just shortly before it was finally blown up and facts on the ground, as it were created.
Simon Young, thank you so much. Well, let's dig deeper and bring in Justin Crump. He's a military veteran and CEO of the International Intelligence and Risk Analysis Consultancy, Sibylline. He joins us from the UK. Mr. Crump, good to see you again. Now, these newest claims, do they fit into the picture of what we know so far about the Nord Stream explosions?
I mean, there are still a lot of theories doing the rounds. It wasn't long ago that the once respected journalist Seymour Hersh produced what he viewed as a detailed expose of exactly how the US government did it, with the involvement of the Norwegians, for example. The Russians blame the UK virtually straight off the event for conducting it. So this is the latest in a number of theories. And as we say, it is still in intelligence information at the moment. You know, obviously there's source veracity and things to consider, but it does seem, as your correspondent said, you know, a fairly detailed amount of information that's come out about how this may have been mounted. But it was almost in some ways the least likely explanation that a non-state group of actors were able to smuggle a very sizable quantity of explosives undetected and get that to the scene to target this incredibly important pipeline. So although it's been postulated for some time, it's one of the theories, it was almost the hardest to understand how that could have come together. And it certainly suggests a sizable amount of money, and a very interesting network behind an operation like this. You can imagine just driving a large amount of explosives through Germany in itself is something I think the German population would be shocked to understand if that was easy. So there's still a lot of questions raised for sure. This was one of the theories. It was always the hardest to see, you know, necessarily being done, but it was never impossible. And we should wait to see, obviously, if more details emerge.
Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says Kyiv was absolutely not involved, and there is actually no indication to prove the contrary. But the evidence can apparently be traced back to Ukraine. Who there, do you think, could have had an interest in blowing up the pipeline?
You know, I think if you look at some of the coverage at the moment, it suggests it was Ukrainian and Russian nationals opposed to Vladimir Putin, is what's being said. And again, we must stress, this is just reporting at the moment. None of us know the full facts, and so we can only work on what we're seeing. But there are obviously quite a lot of powerful interests, I think, within Russia, within Ukraine. Obviously, many Ukrainians not exactly in favor of Vladimir Putin right now or his war, and happy to see things that ensure their national survival, I'm sure. And obviously some within Russia as well. I mean, let's not forget that the oligarchs were the powerful figures in Russia right up until just about a year ago, when many of them fled or were forced effectively into exile with Russian actions in Ukraine, effectively paralyzing their business interests overseas. So lots of very wealthy, influential and networked people would have political and financial reasons potentially to help undermine Putin's war effort, recover maybe some of what they had lost. So, I mean, there's both Russians and Ukrainians you could look at. I do believe it's unlikely at this point the Ukrainian government was involved. Before the incident with the Nord Stream, they had already sort of been told, I think, about some of the operations going on inside Russia. You may remember the assassination of Dara Dugina and other incidents that happened inside Russia that I think the US in particular are getting a bit concerned about because of the spillover risk and the way Ukraine was potentially being portrayed as a result. And so our understanding was the Ukrainian government was being extra careful at that time not to do anything controversial. This would very clearly, fall within that scope. And so I find it hard to believe that it was driven by them.
Justin Crump, many thanks. Always great speaking to you.